festive, special event, so close to this party. And what we will have now is a lecture, a sort of message by Haye van Werf. He was one of the people who was earlier working with 1646, before the Werf was here. I think after the initial start, so he was somewhere in between the people who run it now and the people who started it. And he has prepared a talk for you that will explain the history and how he has been working with 1646 and what it meant for him. Unfortunately, he is not here himself, but he has found a very special way of letting you know his thoughts by the voice of Mr. Ed Schouten and some nice images which will bring Haye van Werf in the space. So, Ed Schouten.
I knew in my last year at the Academy in The Hague that I was a fair painter, but that I would never be more than an average artist. Sitting in my part of the open studio spaces with 14 other painters around me, at that time we were in an old Opel factory building in the Haagse. I wondered if we were all doubting the same thing. Having grown up in the USA, a country whose aim it is to seek out talent and embellish it, almost to the point of expending it, I had been used to art being part of my daily curriculum at school, and when I got home I had proper European parents with books on art and who wanted to talk about it and regularly take my sister and I to museums. There was no doubt that art was important in my life. But at 21, sitting in my part of the general studio spaces, on a chair much like this one, staring at a canvas that had some kind of rainbow fire cloud landscape thing going on, there was more doubt than I was willing to admit. I asked myself, am I here because of color or form? Or am I here because I truly have something to say? I'll be honest. I had no idea what that something to say was. So I did what seemed natural to me, and that was walk about to my fellow classmates and ask them what it was that they were doing. What it was that they were attempting to say. Perhaps hearing from their urgencies, their clear thoughts and deliberations on art and artistic practice would soothe my concerns and put me back on track, back on the road to a successful and comfortable studio practice, back to the feeling that I was the maker of worlds. But it turned out quite the opposite. Maybe it was because we were 3 months away from the end of a 4-year study, 4 years of preparing us to be artists, that the conversations that I had were completely intense, yet they were. And the only conclusion that I could take from them was that I did not share with the others their urge and convictions. I just wasn't interested in becoming a better painter, let alone in being an artist. If I may be perfectly honest, the thought seemed frightening. Constant practical insecurities in a never-ending struggle with conceptual and philosophical conviction? No. It seemed I was too analytical and practical to take that leap of faith. However, because I am a practical thinker as well as an optimist, what I felt and later knew to be true during these conversations was that I was very good at having these conversations. I knew how to talk to artists and figure out how they developed their work and what they were struggling with. I could see contexts and relationships between their work and that of others. From that day on, I was no longer destined to translate thinking into form. I was set on organizing my thinking and the thinking of others, whether it be through conversation, writing, or preferably artwork. I knew I couldn't be an artist because I enjoyed working together with them too much. Not to mention that I quickly figured out that artists rarely talked about their own work to other artists. But that's another story. So, what to do with this self-realization? How to organize the organization of thinking, talking about, and showing art. Simply put, you need space and money, although the first is more important than the latter. You also need proactivity, conviction. You can stare off into the horizon all day and contemplate, but in the end, these thoughts have to find a space. "1646 was the first space to capture my thoughts. I'll be honest once again and tell you that the program in the 1.5 years that I ran 1646 was quite dubious, really. Now and then some lucky good works found their way to the program, but in the end it was too much of an open platform of friends and acquaintances, and too little artistic vision. Let's just say I was still getting used to my transformation from maker to organizer. But having said that, one thing that I was good at was bringing people to the space and activating it. It became a place to meet and talk. It became an important destination for students and former students of the Academy to feel they had something that was theirs. This made it feel like I wasn't running it alone. Every time I did something, it was done in a different constellation. Again, in the end, perhaps not the best formula for creating a true and valuable artistic vision. I am sure that running it with a set group of 5 is hard enough. But such differentiation is important in establishing art as a destination, as a place where thinking, doubting, preaching, complaining, proclaiming, reading, translating, experimentation, presentation, misunderstanding, talking, and doing were all ingredients of a variation in order to install and secure advancement. Advancement on the most elementary level of social interaction to the highest ranks of cultural, political, and philosophical thought. Now, I am not an old man yet, and this talk has become nostalgic enough. So what does this mean for 1646 and its future? Actually, I don't know. Actually, I don't think that's what the reason was for inviting me over here. It's not a birthday, Nico said, but I am going to bring out just a little bit of cake and candles anyway. I began this text with the intention of narrating from the future. But in fact, I am narrating from another place, not another time. I could attempt to forecast, however, and I think this is a term due to both its figurative as well as its unpredictable connotation that very much applies when speaking of the future contemporary arts in our time and place. The cultural landscape of the Netherlands definitely sees clouds upon the horizon, but I think that if there is one thing that will come from all the rupture and disbelief of the recent past, it is that it is not about the Netherlands. It is about engaging with what is most immediate, that can be both a place as well as a concept. 1646 has impressively done both in the last years. The exhibitions have brought ideas and artists from faraway places such as the deep south of America to as close as The Hague itself. All the while, the people having worked with and visited the space have felt a sense of contribution. That is what I mean with immediate. I believe the people in charge of 1646 somewhat a profile for almost all people in charge of the space since its beginning, are acutely aware of where they are and how big or small they can be. This mindfulness is what allows for risk, which in the end is everything. I'm going to end now, but not before I propose a modest wish for blowing out the birthday candles. I hope that the immediate surroundings to this space will always remain as diverse as they are now. The Boekhoffstraat is wonderfully equipped with LP records, money exchange, mobile phones, military supplies, fish, fishing poles, wallpaper, foxy hair, old radios, carpets, the best roti, the worst roti, and even a dill roti. That gives 1646 a sense of rootedness. For the storm that's coming, we may need all of these, and I know where I would shelter.